In the quiet archives of the Quang Trung Ward People's Committee, the file on Nguyen Thi Thu was closed. It had been closed for 5 years. According to official records, Chikluk Khaiter So 80/TLK-BS, Thu had died of a sudden stroke on June 8, 2020. Her family had mourned her, a grave had been dug, and the community had moved on. But on the morning of December 17, 2025, the impossible happened. A woman walked into the Quang Trung police station. She looked weary, perhaps a bit older than the photo in the file, but the resemblance was undeniable. She sat down before the officers and made a request that defied the laws of nature. She wanted to cancel her own death certificate. The woman was Nguyen Thi Thu. She was alive, breathing, and standing at the center of one of the most audacious insurance fraud schemes the province had ever seen. To understand the resurrection, one must rewind to 2017. Following a divorce, Thu, born 1984, moved back in with her mother, Madame Nguyen Thi Thu, in Beamsun Town. Life was hard. Thu worked itinerant jobs in the southern provinces, but by 2020, her world was darkening. She was diagnosed with cancer, her relationship with her mother was fracturing under the weight of constant arguments, and she was financially desperate. It was during this period of despair that Thu hatched a macabre plan. Between her travels, she had purchased 4 life insurance policies from Prudential and Fu Hung Life. She realized she was worth dead than alive. She needed an accomplice. She turned to the only person she could trust, her mother. According to police dossiers, Madame Top initially recoiled at the idea, but Thu played her final card, a psychological ultimatum. "She threatened me," Madame Top later confessed to investigators. "She said if I didn't help her fake her death, she would bite through an electrical cord and kill herself for real. Then I would lose my child and the money." Cornered by fear and greed, the mother agreed. The script was written. The date was set for June 7, 2020. The execution of the plan was theatrical, relying on the sanctity of death to shield them from scrutiny. Thu swallowed a dose of sleeping pills, enough to sedate her but not kill her. Then she staged a fall in the bathroom, deliberately injuring her face to cause bleeding, adding a visceral reality to the accident. She collapsed on her bed, feigning death. Panic was manufactured. Neighbors and local authorities were notified of a sudden death. Behind the scenes, the mother and daughter had enlisted a third party, a local shaman from Huat Giang commune, who has since passed away in 2022, to help orchestrate the spiritual and logistical cover-up. As the village prepared for a tragedy, the corpse was waiting for darkness. Around midnight, while the house was quiet or perhaps distracted by the orchestrated chaos, Thu rose from the dead. She slipped out of the house under the cover of night, hiding first at the shaman's residence before fleeing south to Dong Nai province. Back in Thanh Hoa, a funeral was held. Tears were shed over an empty coffin, or perhaps a weighted one, and a fake grave was established. The community paid their respects, unaware they were actors in a $1 million play. With Thu living as a ghost in the south, Madame Top played the grieving mother. On June 8, 2020, she obtained the official death certificate. Armed with this government-stamped proof, she approached the insurance companies. The ruse worked perfectly. Investigators later found the liquidation papers in Madame Top's home. Prudential paid out over 682 million VND. Fu Hung Life paid 600 million. In total, the mother and daughter had defrauded the system of over 1.2 billion VND, approximately 50,000 USD, a fortune in rural Vietnam. For 5 years, the secret held. Thu lived under the radar, a person without a name, while her mother lived with the proceeds of the crime. However, the perfect crime failed at the finish line. whether driven by guilt, a need to reclaim her legal identity for administrative reasons, or simply the arrogance that time had washed away the crime. Thu returned to Thanh Hoa in late 2025. Her request to delete her death registration alerted the Quang Trung police. The police were not easily swayed by ghosts. Recognizing the anomalies, specifically that a dead woman was sitting in their lobby, they transferred the case to Thanh Hoa Provincial Police. The investigation was swift. Confronted by the sheer impossibility of her existence, Thu and her mother confessed. The investigation concluded that the fraud was sophisticated, exploiting the keha, or loopholes in local administrative procedures, and the cultural taboo of questioning a family in mourning. The subjects were willing to use every trick, including spiritual elements and the trust of the local government, to hide their crime, a police spokesperson noted. Today, instead of enjoying a windfall, Thu and Madame Top face criminal charges under Article 213 of the Penal Code for insurance fraud. Because the amount exceeds 1 billion VND and involved organized deceit, they face a potential sentence of 3 to 7 years in prison. The fake grave of Nguyen Thi Thu remains in Thanh Hoa, a hollow monument to a daughter who sold her life for money and a mother who helped her bury the truth.
All right, let's get into this. We're talking about an absolutely wild story of a woman who, for all intents and purposes, came back from the dead. But this wasn't some miracle, nope. It was an incredibly detailed plan to fake her own death, all for a giant insurance payday.
I mean, seriously, what would you do? It sounds like something straight out of a movie script, right? But for a few government officials in Vietnam, this wasn't fiction. This bizarre, impossible question became their reality, and it kicked off an investigation into a crime that had stayed buried for 5 whole years.
So picture this. It's just a normal day at a government office in Thanh Hoa province. People are filing paperwork, phones are ringing, and then everything grinds to a halt. A woman walks in, a woman whose official records say she died back in 2020. She is very clearly alive, and what she's about to ask is going to blow their mind. Okay, so let's start right there. At the exact moment this whole complicated lie just started to completely fall apart. This is the story of how a ghost decided to walk out of the shadows and right back into the system she had tricked.
You can just feel the confusion in that room. This woman, Nguyen Thi Thu, walks up to the counter and asks for something that sounds impossible. "Hi, can you please cancel my death certificate?" This isn't like fixing a typo on a driver's license. She's telling them her entire death, the funeral, the mourning, all of it was one big lie. And this really lays out the completely bizarre situation they were in. On one hand, you have an official, legally binding document, a death certificate from 5 years ago. On the other hand, you have the woman it's about, standing right there, very much alive. For the police, this wasn't just some clerical error. It was an immediate, flashing red flag that a serious crime had been committed.
So, a dead woman showing up immediately begs the question, why? I mean, why would anyone go through all the trouble, the incredible risk to fake their own death? To figure that out, we have to rewind the clock back to 2020.
So Nguyen Thi Thu's life was, well, it was a mess. She was divorced, she was living with her mom, and they were fighting constantly. And then on top of all that, she gets diagnosed with cancer. She was completely desperate. But amid all that chaos, she had one thing: 4 separate life insurance policies. And that's when this dark, crazy idea started to form. And this quote from her mother, wow, it just tells you everything you need to know about the pressure she was under. At first, her mom, Nguyen Thi Thu, said no way. But Thu's desperation turned ugly. She basically blackmailed her, threatening to kill herself for real if her mom didn't go along with the plan. Faced with losing her daughter either way, she felt trapped. She had to agree.
So now, with her mother on board, this wasn't just a desperate thought anymore. It became a full-blown conspiracy. The next challenge? Staging a death so real, so convincing, it would fool everyone, their family, their friends, and all the authorities.
The plan they came up with was like a performance in 4 acts. First, the accident. Thu took sleeping pills and pretended to have a fatal fall. Then, to make it look legit, they hired a shaman to perform secret burial rites. After that came the public funeral, where their own heartbroken family mourned a woman who was actually still alive. And finally, with everyone believing she was gone, Thu just disappeared. She woke up and quietly left town.
And here's the key to how they pulled it off for so long. Only 3 people were in on it. That's it. By keeping the circle of trust that small, they managed to fool an entire community. They let their own family grieve a death that never even happened.
So, the funeral was a success. The next phase of the plan could begin. Get the money and vanish. For the next 5 years, as far as the world was concerned, Nguyen Thi Thu was a ghost.
So here's how it all played out. The setup starts way back in 2017, when she buys the policies. Then in 2020, she dies, and her mom cashes in on the insurance almost immediately. For the next 4 years, Thu is hundreds of kilometers away, living a secret life. The plan worked perfectly, until the day she decided to walk back into that government office.
And what was it all for? This. Over 1.2 billion Vietnamese dong. That is a life-changing amount of money paid out by 2 different insurance companies. That was the prize. And for 5 years, it really looked like they had gotten away with a perfect crime.
But you know, a lie this huge, it can't stay hidden forever. The moment Thu reappeared, the consequences, both legal and social, started coming for them, and fast. So under Vietnamese law, what they did has a name: fraud in insurance business. And it's a really big deal, because the amount of money was so large and the plan was so detailed, both Thu and her mother are looking at some serious time, somewhere between 3 and 7 years in prison.
But the fallout goes so much further than just prison time. Think about it. This was a massive betrayal of their family, their friends, everyone who mourned for her. It also stomped all over a really important cultural value in Vietnam about honoring the dead. And on a bigger level, this whole case blew the lid off some serious weaknesses in how deaths are verified and how insurance companies pay out claims.
You know, in the end, this story is just an incredible reminder. A lie that was smart enough to fool everyone for 5 long years still completely collapsed. It just leaves you with this one fascinating question. What could be so awful about being a ghost, about officially not existing, that would make someone choose to confess, knowing full well it meant they were going to prison?